Hey guys, it's Sandro here, and today's video is a bit of a different start to finish pre-sale detail on this 2020 BMW M2. Okay guys, so while you have a look at the pre-sale detail inspection footage, I'll just fill you in on this job. This M2 belongs to a colleague and friend who bought it new a little under 2 years ago and absolutely loves it. But his circumstances had since changed and he wanted to trade it in to purchase a utility vehicle to suit his current needs. As far as the condition of this M2 goes, it's damage-free, not a high mileage vehicle and mechanically sound with regular servicing, but also perhaps lacking in a little regular washing, maintenance and cleaning if I'm being totally honest. So in other words, it's got a lot of good things going for it, and a good pre-sale detail should, in my opinion and estimate, really help it a lot in making it far more presentable and valuable for sale if done right. Now the restrictions of this job is that I had one day not only to complete the detail ready for sale the next morning back to the dealership who's already made an acceptable offer based on the owner's description, but also comprehensively film the process in that same period to make this video, which in hindsight I probably shouldn't have done. So I'll start with a bit of an apology for some of the footage that was a little rushed and perhaps not as comprehensive as most of my videos due to having very little time. But I did really want to make this video for a couple more reasons that I'll get into later on. Now, good information, good planning, and a clear end goal are vital components to ensuring a successful outcome. I know the history of this car, I have a good grasp of its current condition, I know what needs addressing and how long I can spend on each area, and I also know what this job is meant to achieve as a pre-sale detail. I have the car in my possession for a total of 9 hours before the owner needs to pick it up, but I also know that filming the process will eat up at least 2 to 3 hours, so realistically I have 6 to 7 hours of actual detailing time to complete it, and this is how I allocated that time. I gave myself 2.5 hours for the wash, decontamination and drying of the vehicle, 1.5 hours to clean and refresh the interior, 2 hours for an enhancement polish and protection, and then about half an hour to an hour to freshen up the engine bay, dress and finish the whole car. And I'll be keeping an eye on the clock and making sure that I move on to each area once my time is up. Now starting with the wheels, a lot of guys would have seen me do a similar process many times. So it's not so much that I'm changing my wheel cleaning process, but rather not being quite as fussy or double checking my work because there simply isn't time for that. I basically have 4 to 5 minutes to clean and seal each wheel rather than infinitely more time in a higher end process. In other words, it's still going to be a good outcome, but just retuned to be more appropriate for a quicker pre-sale detail. So the tyres and wheel wells were given a good scrub down with Shine Supply Wise Guy. The inner and outer wheels were initially given a pre-treatment with NV Purge and rinsed down before reapplying Purge and using a variety of brushes and a wash mitt to physically clean them. The final step was using CarPro Hydro 2 to quickly protect and enhance them, which is just a perfect wheel sealant in this sort of scenario. So what I'm trying to explain here, not only with the wheels but with this whole job, is that I'm looking for a good or even great result, but I'm not going to stop and go over everything with a magnifying glass as I would with a higher end job. If it's a good improvement and looks great at a normal viewing distance, that's what a good pre-sale detail outcome is all about. Next up was the pre-clean chemical treatment. In this process, my goal is to start lifting and softening as much of the dirt and environmental contamination as possible in the most effective way I can. I know this car hasn't been washed in quite a while, and as a whole, it hasn't been washed as frequently as it ideally should be. So it's a pretty safe bet that there's going to be an accumulation of fallout and traffic film that will require a little more than just a standard hand wash to remove. So I started off by coating the entire car with NV Purify to start attacking both the environmental fallout and traffic film, which as you'll hopefully see was at least at a moderate level. purifier was given 5 minutes to do its thing, I then soaked the M2 with an alkaline-based pre-soak foam in the form of NV Snow Plus to give both purge and the snow foam another 5 to 10 minutes to keep on working. While this was happening, I used a 1 to 5 dilution of CarPro Multi-X all-purpose cleaner to help treat all the door jamb areas that had a moderate amount of dirt build-up, so that when I rinse the car down, it should help dissolve and flush the door jambs out a little better. Next was the initial pressure rinse down. Although we talked about moving a little quicker in this pre-sale detail due to time restraints, this first initial pressure rinse down isn't somewhere where I skimped on time. If anything, I spent a little more time rinsing the whole car down a little more slowly and methodically than I usually do, and this is why. I know I don't have time to brush out all the seams, trims and door jambs on this car, as that would be pressing it for time. So my best course of action is to make this rinsing stage as effective as possible in not only removing the dirt and contamination sitting on the paint, but also to blast that water beam purposely into the panel, trim and door jamb seams to clean them as effectively as possible. I know it may be hard to see in the footage, but a lot of that dirt and even larger, looser particles were shooting out of those door jamb and seam areas in this process, meaning that when I do my final wipe later on, it should be a much quicker and safer process to get them respectfully clean. Next was the hand wash stage. For this, I once again used MV Snow Plus in my wash bucket, but I actually doubled its strength from 1 to 200 to 1 to 100 to give it a little more cleaning power. I additionally went over each section twice with my wash mitt, rinsing it in between to further make the hand wash stage as effective as possible. There's a misconception that only stronger chemicals and processes like iron and tar removers can remove fallout and tar deposits, which is incorrect. Yes, it's true that iron removers are more effective at treating severe environmental fallout, just like tar removers are also more effective at removing stubborn road tar. But what many people don't realize is that every time you wash your car with just your car soap, you're almost always removing at least some of these particles with every wash. So all I'm trying to point out here is that good and regular safe car washing will absolutely remove environmental and traffic film contamination. Now in this particular case on the M2, I've already softened, lifted and removed at least a good portion of that initial contamination with the chemical and snow foam pre-treatments. And what I was hoping, being that this isn't an overly old or neglected vehicle, is that giving it a supercharged hand wash might remove enough of that remaining contamination as to avoid the need to clay or use more aggressive tar removers. Now during the secondary pressure rinse down, I could immediately see that the water behaviour was flat and pooling, meaning that there was definitely no existing paint protection products that I need to worry about removing, and I could also see that the paint was looking much wider and brighter, with no obvious signs of stubborn dirt or grime remaining. As I ran my hands over the paint, it was also feeling quite smooth, clean and bare. Now I'll be honest that there was a few little fallout particles on the top horizontal panels that I could still feel, but just not enough that would warrant me claying the whole vehicle for this pre-sale detail level of work. Now, if there was a lot of fallout or even a moderate amount left on the paint, I would have absolutely clayed it. And if this was a higher end detail, I would have also clayed it even though it was such a small amount, because that's what high end work is all about, fussing over all the details. But on this job, given the time and level of work being pursued, it just wasn't appropriate to fuss over a few remaining fallout particles that would most likely be lifted off in the next polishing stage. The M2 was then given a quick towel dry to soak up the majority of the water, which was then followed up by a quick blow dry with the Metrovac blower to remove the trap water so that it wouldn't interfere with the polishing stage. So onto the interior detailing stage. After removing the car mats and any larger rubbish or personal items that would get in the way, I used the Metrovac vacuum blow in blower mode and spent 5 to 10 minutes blowing out the mats and then the whole interior of the car. I've talked about this in a few past videos, that giving the interior a quick blowout helps a lot of the dust and dirt get dislodged from all the tight, hard to reach areas, making it easier and more accessible to vacuum most of it, as a lot of it settles on the seats and carpets, and you can even blow a fair amount of it out of the interior, which really helps a lot with time when you're doing a quick interior tidy up such as this. After that, I switched the Metrovac into vacuum mode, and using both the thin crevice nozzle and the round brush attachment, I spent a good 3/4 of an hour vacuuming and dusting the mats and the whole interior of the cabin from top to bottom. For the most part, a good blowout, vacuuming and dusting is what this interior really needed most, so I made sure to put enough time into that to achieve a great result. After that, knowing that I just wasn't going to have enough time to deep clean this interior with brushes, pads, or any sort of extractor or steamer, and then also having to protect, dress, and enhancement, I had to find a quicker approach. So I used MV Nourish, which is an interior quick detailer that can perform some light cleaning and lay down some light protection all in one step. So the basic technique was spraying Nourish onto a microfiber cloth and then using a little elbow grease to lift off any light dirt, and then following up with a second cloth to buff it streak free. Now all in all, the interior of this M2 really wasn't too bad to start with, so this process did end up working extremely well, not only to remove light marks but also to reset the look of the interior and trims back to a new factory finish. Now, if the interior was badly soiled, then I would have had to restructure my allocated time and do some more intensive interior cleaning. But I already knew this during my initial inspection that I should be able to get away with just a quick interior detailer. The last step was giving the interior windows, mirrors and screens a once-over with CarPro Clarify glass cleaner, and I was done, and actually super happy with the outcome. So about 4 hours into this detail, it was now time to enhance and protect the paint. I gave the vehicle a quick blow down with the air to remove any dust, and then followed up with an IPA wipe down to remove any chemical or detergent residue, as well as give all the door jambs and trims a quick follow-up clean. Now, being that time is of the essence, I went straight to an all-in-one polish in the form of NV Morph and the ShyMate Blue one-step pad for a test section for the paint enhancement and protection stage. I put a little more product on the fresh pad to help prime it up, set my machine speed to 5 on the 21mm 6-inch cordless ShyMate, which really seems to be its sweet spot, and started working a much larger section than normal, doing 4 passes in total using moderate pressure and a moderate arm speed. Now, the reason I'm working a much larger section than normal is because my goal here isn't so much to correct any severe defects, but rather deep clean, enhance and protect the paint, which doesn't require the same intensive paint correction process. Overall, Morph is more or less a light all-in-one primer polish, but it does have a little bite to start with. And the ShyMate Blue Foam pad is a light cutting or one-stage pad, which is relatively gentle but also with a little bite of its own. And I've never come across a white clear-coated BMW that didn't have hard paint. So as a light enhancement combination, this all makes a lot of sense as a great combination, at least on paper. Add to that Morph being an all-in-one primer polish will also leave a protective sealant in place, and it's definitely a quicker option than doing separate correction and protection stages. White paint is always the hardest paint to capture on camera, but I hope you guys can see that the polish section not only looks a little glossier, but also removed pretty much all the water spots, light swirls, and just looks a little richer and more vibrant. So it looks like a fantastic improvement. It's a gentle combination that's going to remove next to no clear coat and add some protection at the same time, and working these larger sections should allow me to get the whole car polished within my time frame. So in other words, it's a winner. So after just 6 sections and about 15 or so minutes later, I was done with the whole bonnet and straight onto the roof. Now once again guys, I'll apologize for not having time to film all the information, like measuring the paint and doing a pre-polish inspection to better show the condition of the paint and so on, like I usually do. But I had to stick to a deadline on finishing the car, and I just had to keep on moving to get the job done on time. To backtrack a little, what I can tell you is that the paint had just a little light to moderate amount of water spots, light swirls and a little oxidation, but it's not like it was terrible or anything like that. Just in need of a light correction to bring it back and make it a lot more presentable for sale. Now some other things to mention is that I didn't use masking tape. You'll notice on this BM that the black plastic trims are clear coated, so I'm actually going to polish over them as well. And in regards to things like rubber trims and panel edges, I'm not going to polish or get too close to them, and I'm going to clean up any polishing residue as I go. This is the real difference between a comprehensive paint correction process and a quick paint enhancement process like this. I'm not pursuing perfection or worrying about the finer details. I'm focusing on the broader picture and areas and looking to achieve the most impactful result in the most limited time possible. So when people comment how they don't understand how some detailers can polish a whole car in just a few hours when it takes them a few days to do the same thing, this is how it's done. By working larger sections, using a single large polisher and really just focusing on the main, broader areas of the paint without double checking your work and fussing over every defect. And I want to stress that there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing this work. In fact, this type of detail was my bread and butter job back in my mobile detailing days. It all comes down to just being honest about what you're promising and charging based on the results you deliver. The other thing to point out is the appropriateness of the work you're pursuing based on the condition of the car and the owner's goal. Now if this car's paint and interior was completely trashed, then my approach, time and budget would have also had to have changed. And if the owner's goal wasn't to detail the car ready for sale, then my approach once again would have changed. The specifics matter guys, and I won't speak for everyone, but in my case, my clients come to me for advice, want my input and trust that I'm going to point them in the right direction. So it would simply be wrong for me to recommend a concourse level of detailing for a pre-sale detail that will never return that financial investment, or to recommend a high-end detail for a daily driver that simply isn't going to be well maintained. So for this particular case where the owner just wants to increase the resale value of a 2-year-old vehicle, this is absolutely the appropriate sort of detail to pursue, which is certainly not high-end but still quite impactful and ultimately a great investment, which I'll talk about more in a bit. So let's wrap up this video. Once again guys, I didn't quite get the opportunity to film all the finishing steps, but after the paint enhancement was completed, I did dress the tyres, do a final wipe down of all the paint, trims, glass and even the engine bay with a quick detailer, and give the interior a final vacuum, making sure that I was checking the finished results and just putting on the finishing touches. Full disclosure, I did run about 20 minutes late or so, So I had the owner patiently waiting as I did a couple of final walk around shots for this video, even as the sun was setting in the horizon. Physically and mentally, I was beat and completely exhausted, which is why I mentioned at the start of this video that in hindsight, I probably shouldn't have attempted filming this detail. Now what I can tell you is that the next morning, after the dealership inspected the car for trade-in, they actually ended up offering the owner $2,000 more than they had agreed on because they were so impressed in how good the car looked and said they'd immediately just put it on the showroom for sale. I don't know about you, but this was the first time I ever heard of a car dealership offering more money than the previously agreed value, which I gotta say felt really great to hear and shows that there's still a few good dealerships out there that do the right thing. On a final note, I also wanted to share that I had another ulterior motive in making this video, as it will be the last video you'll ever see out of the CDC detailing studio that I've now been in for over 5 years. It was sad to leave, but also exciting to move on. And full disclosure, I left this studio and filmed this video about 6 months ago. And due to all the craziness in the world, we are still in the process of outfitting the new building with the new detailing setup due to all the government restrictions, labor and material shortages, which has just been an absolute nightmare to get anything done in a reasonable time frame. So what was meant to take a month or so has now dragged on to 6 months, and who knows how much longer it'll be. I know some of you guys have seen glimpses of the new place, and you'll probably see a few more while it's still being built, but there's still loads more to do, and I will have more on that in due time. I'll leave you guys with the rest of the footage, and if you enjoyed this video and would like to say thanks and help support future content, you can do so by buying me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/ccad, in which I'll have a link to in the description box, and thank you everyone for the support so far. As always, I really hope you guys enjoyed and found this video useful. Please share it, give it a like and comment below to help support this channel, and I'll see you guys soon.
Why do you stick around? You know I never make it proud, but here you are, holding my head up. When I see you cry, I think of leaving it behind, but in my mind I know you won't let it fly. Yeah, darling, you've got so much patience with me. Even when we disagree, you never leave. Darling, you've got so much patience with me. I hope to share the grace you